Bill Henshaw here again for the Constitutional Crisis Channel, another current events update. And out here, you're probably aware of this one across the nation. If you're not, we've had another murder by cop out here in the Bayview area of San Francisco. But this black kid that was, from what I saw in the video, just walking down the street that may or may not have had a knife in his hand, but even if he did, was no threat to these cops at all. And yet the one of them goes up relatively near him and demands he drop the knife, and he doesn't do it, and the bastard shoots him like 17 times, and of course he's dead. And this is a major big deal. This cop may actually get arrested and maybe even will get charged with first-degree murder here. Although, just as I think in the Chicago case, even if they charge him with that, that's not going to be the final outcome, because they'll get an attorney and they'll plea bargain it down to probably voluntary manslaughter, and the bastard may get 3 or 4 years in jail and be out like in 2 years for good behavior, like Johannes Messerly over here in the Fruitvale BART station when he knocked off the kid there, Oscar Grant. I mean, he was out of jail in less than a year. That's how this BS system works with civil rights, quote unquote. Nevertheless, the point here is we have another one on our hands. You would think this is, 8 or 9 or 10 of them in the space of the last 12 to 18 months, and strikingly similar circumstances, all of which have happened to occurred with people of color, black men for the most part. But don't be misled here. Just because it hasn't happened, to one of us white people, doesn't mean that it can't and won't. I mean, we're just as much in the aim of the cops as anyone else is here. It's just that it hasn't happened yet. But if they think they can do this to anybody, and they think they have absolute total power, this is what gets things off in the wrong direction. And it's even worse, because if the courts wouldn't have any jurisdiction over the crime that you were alleged to have committed, then as a peace officer, you're acting outside the scope of your authority. So, that said, it's a mess, and it certainly looks like first-degree murder to me. And one of the reasons, from my own purely personal perspective, is those of you familiar with the movie will recall at the beginning, when they accused Andy Dufresne of murdering his wife and lover, the DA made a big deal of pointing out that all he had was a 6-shooter, and yet he fired the gun empty and put in some more rounds and fired again, shooting each of them in the head. That shows the intent to commit the murders, never mind the fact they couldn't produce the weapon and tie it to Andy Dufresne. He probably never did all this to start with. But if that's first-degree murder, so is this. The cop may have not had to reload with a Glock 9mm, mind you, but if you put 17 shots into somebody in the space of under a minute, and with no probable cause whatsoever, it looks like to me, to even take them into the police station, I mean, what else can that be? Now, what we have to get past are these damn police officers associations, especially out in Chicago, where they're claiming the video is misleading and all that, and, it doesn't show, and that the cop was in defense, afraid for his life, and this, that, and the other, all this nonsense. And that Chicago video is clearer than the one in San Francisco. It still isn't great, but this poor kid out there did nothing, and he got gunned down in the same manner. And this is the kind of stuff that there needs to be big changes here. And as I've said in earlier videos on this subject, what I want to know is these cops involved, particularly, were they hired from the military, particularly directly from the military? Because that, in my mind, is a disqualification for anything other than a desk job as far as police work is concerned. Because that mindset you have, I mean, this is not Afghanistan here, yet. And you just can't go around. I mean, this is the United States of America here. It's a different place. We're peaceful. We're not out there, with rare exceptions, and most of them caused by the government, by the way, 9/11, Oklahoma City, and so forth, at the behest of the government behind the scenes. We don't deal with that here. There's no reason to have that mindset. And I'm just waiting for them, especially in Chicago, to assert to the PTSD defense. Because if that happens, they're going to get an amicus brief from me in the court and say, wait just a minute here. It doesn't apply, because if they had PTSD, they shouldn't have been hired in the first place. And now we're going to get higher in the food chain to get a responsible party to hopefully explain to an inflamed jury why they hired people like this when they knew, or should have known, that they had a propensity for violence and would go out and commit murders while on the job, quote unquote. That's the kind of relief we want to seek, and you ain't going to get it in a civil, quote unquote, rights case. Not going to happen. There are going to be some successes here with Eric Garner Garner in New York being one of them, where they're going to have to, pay up, and the cops going to maybe have to do some real jail time for that particular incident. It does happen. They have to make it look good. That said, they're going to be few and far between. They'll just pay off people, and as far as the cops going to jail or losing their precious pension or what have you, that's rarely going to happen. Although it should, as far as I'm concerned, every time. But the people we want to go after are the ones that are training these cops, or not training them, as the case may be. And I have a lot of communications out there with various people in those positions asking very pointed questions as to why they're not doing their job to make damn sure that they do their job and faithfully execute the laws of the state of California here, and not go out and execute persons of interest or people that may have committed crimes. I mean, that's the page we have to turn here, and we have to do it in a hurry. If we do it along the lines of what I'm doing here, without all the politically correct BS, we're going to get a lot further and a lot faster. So I'll have updates on this one when they come in too. Thank you.